The sunlight was soft that morning. It crept in through the curtains and kissed my cheek as I lay in bed, still tired from the last round of medication. The doctors had said I needed rest. My husband agreed. He even insisted, "Just rest, babe. I'll take the kids out for the day. Fresh air, something fun." He kissed my forehead like he used to, when we were still real. I smiled. Weakly. I was grateful that after everything, he still cared enough to handle things on his own. I heard the kids laughing downstairs, shoes rumping. Then the door closed behind them. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like safety. I turned on my tablet, hoping to watch something light before drifting off again, but the notifications had piled up. Group chats, missed calls, tagged photos. One story auto-loaded before I could stop it. I froze. There they were, my children, my babies, hugging a woman I'd never seen before, smiling in a way they used to smile with me. Caption: Weekend with Daddy. The video played again. The woman kissed my daughter on the cheek and said, "So sweet, they remind me of you." I dropped the tablet. I stared at the ceiling. My heartbeat didn't speed up. It just dulled. Like a heavy drum losing rhythm. She reminded her of me? So who did she think I was? Who had she been told I was? That was the moment I realized I wasn't just replaced, I was declared dead while I was still breathing. And somewhere, right now, my husband was building a new life on the ashes of the one I never got to finish. If this story grips you, subscribe for more real-life betrayals, revenge, and justice told from a woman's point of view. My husband was building a new life on the ashes of the one I never got to finish. I didn't cry that day. Not then. I closed the tablet. I lay there with the covers pulled just under my chin, staring out at the sun-drenched window, trying to convince myself I had misunderstood. Maybe it was an old friend. Maybe a cousin. Maybe it was just a bad angle. Maybe I was tired. After all, medication does strange things to memory, right? But I knew better. Because the truth doesn't scream, it whispers. And that whisper had already begun months ago. It started small, a shift in how he said goodnight. No forehead kiss, no lingering glance, just a quick pat on the arm and sleep tight. The first few times I chalked it up to stress. He was always busy, always tired, but then I noticed how he started calling me strong. "You're strong, babe. You don't need anyone to fuss over you. You've always been the type to bounce back. That's why I love you." It sounded like a compliment, but it felt like preparation. He was detaching, framing my independence as justification to abandon me emotionally. The man who once couldn't sleep without hearing me breathe now went out for long drives alone, claimed the kids were restless, thought I'd take them out for a bit, he'd say, give you peace. At first, I thanked him. Then, I found the receipt. It was from a small boutique cafe. 2 adult meals, 2 kids' desserts, 1 rose-colored drink titled The Sunset Kiss. It wasn't ours. I confronted him gently, half laughing, pretending to be curious. "That receipt in your coat, where's that place?" He smiled. "Oh, that's just a new cafe I found. Thought I'd check it out with the kids." I nodded. But The silence between his words screamed louder than anything I'd ever heard. Next came the locked phone. He used to leave it anywhere. Kitchen counters, bedside tables. Now, it never left his hand. And when I asked for it to call my sister, just for a second, he flinched. "Battery's dead," he said, stuffing it into his pocket. I watched him text someone that night when he thought I was asleep. Then the strangest thing happened. One afternoon, my daughter brought me a drawing. It was a child's sketch, stick figures and crayon hearts, but it had 3 figures. Mommy Tessa, she had written above, one of the women. That wasn't me. I held the paper like it was glass. "Sweetheart," I asked gently, "who's this?" She smiled innocently. "That's the lady who gives us candy. Daddy says she's special. She said she'll be my stepmom soon." I didn't speak. I didn't even move. I folded the paper and put it in my drawer, right beside my prescriptions. He came home that night with takeout, smiling like everything was fine. Kissed my forehead like everything was still real. And I smiled back, because I finally understood what was happening. He wasn't cheating. He was transitioning, preparing a new life and rehearsing my absence like it was an act in a play, polishing his smile, training the kids, testing her patience. He wasn't in the middle of betrayal. He was at the tail end of it, almost done, almost free. And somewhere deep down, I think he thought I wouldn't notice, that I was too tired, too broken, too trusting. But the thing about silence is it gives you clarity. And clarity, that's where the true war truly begins. The next morning, I called my sister. She'd always been my sounding board, the one I stayed up with during her heartbreaks, the one I covered for when she needed a place to run. If anyone would believe me, it would be her. I told her everything about the boutique receipt, the drawing with Mommy Tessa, the way he started watching me like I was fading into furniture. She was quiet for a while. Then she sighed and said, "Maybe you're just being sensitive. You've been unwell. Stress can make you see things." My throat tightened. "I'm not making this up. I didn't say you were. I'm just saying, maybe you're reading too much into it. He's been taking care of the kids, hasn't he? Running errands? Stepping up?" That word, stepping up, made something in my chest ache. He wasn't stepping up. He was staging a disappearance. Mine. I tried again, this time with my childhood friend Ijeoma. We'd gone through everything together. School exams, marriage, even miscarriages. She'd seen my husband at his worst, and once told me if he ever cheated, she'd help me bury the body. Figuratively, of course. She listened, asked questions, then said something I didn't expect. "I mean, you've always been the strong one, sis. Maybe he just needed warmth, after your illness?" Warmth. As if I'd turned cold simply because I needed help. As if my exhaustion made him lonely, and his loneliness made this understandable. I swallowed hard. "So, you're saying I pushed him into another woman's arms?" "I'm not saying that," she said quickly. "I'm just saying marriage gets complicated." Complicated. That word felt like acid in my mouth. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the stillness of my room. The kind of silence that used to comfort me. Now it just echoed every word that made me feel insane. That night, I had a flashback. Me, staying up all night with his mother during her last illness, reading her psalms and wiping her forehead. Me covering for him when he lost his job and refused to tell anyone. Me cashing out part of my father's inheritance to bail out his brother when he got into legal trouble. Me alone with 2 babies while he claimed late shifts only to come home smelling like some perfume I'd never worn. I remembered every sacrifice, every silence I swallowed so his ego could stay intact. And now I was being told I was reading too much into it. Even my cousin Nini, the bold one, the firecracker, laughed when I showed her the drawing. Kids are dramatic. My son once drew me as a dragon with fire breath. Doesn't mean I'm abusing him. I wanted to scream. But I didn't, because this was deeper than betrayal. This was erasure. Not only was he building a new story without me, but the people I thought would shield me were siding with the rewrite, not with malice, but with fatigue, with misunderstanding, with the kind of subtle bias that always believes the man is doing his best and the woman is too emotional. It was in that moment I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just being replaced in my marriage, I was being replaced in my own narrative. And no one, not my sister, not my friend, not my family, was willing to see it. They weren't cruel. They were just comfortable. Comfortable believing he was decent. Comfortable believing I was strong. Comfortable believing that illness must have made me paranoid. Because if they did believe me, they'd have to confront him. And if they confronted him, they'd lose their access to him. To the jokes, the parties, the charm. So they chose the easier woman to abandon. Me. I could forgive betrayal. But being doubted by a loved one, that cracked something deeper than trust. It cracked my faith in people, in memories, in loyalty. From that point on, I stopped explaining. And I started watching. Because no one was coming to save me, so I would save myself. Quietly. I started with the house. Not because I was ready to fight, but because I needed to know what, if anything, still had my name on it. We'd bought the home 10 years ago. Back then, I was too busy rocking newborns and managing nap schedules to care much about paperwork. He handled the mortgage, the lawyer, the title. I assumed my name was there. I was the one who decorated every room, picked out the tiles, painted the nursery walls. But the paper said otherwise. It took me one quiet call to the land office, one request for a copy of the deed, one printed envelope. And there it was, his name. Only. I held that paper like it was a betrayal folded into ink. No Mr. and Mrs., no co-ownership, no protection. Just him. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. Instead, I took a walk around the neighborhood, past the bakery where we'd celebrated our first anniversary, past the school where my youngest had just learned how to tie her shoes, past the house across the street with the cracked mailbox that I used to laugh at, thinking, at least we've got it more together than that. Now I wasn't so sure. When I got back home, he was watching TV with the kids, laughing. Normal. I watched him through the crack in the door. A man who had taken everything I helped build and prepared it for someone else. The next day, I knocked on my neighbor's door, Mrs. Leland, an older woman, retired lawyer, sharp as a blade. We'd only spoken briefly before. Garden compliments, trash day reminders. But that day, I brought her banana bread and a question. She read the deed in silence, then looked up at me and said, "He's slowly cutting you out. Probably started a year ago." I asked her what I could do. Her response was simple, surgical. She said, "You can lose if you fight emotionally, but if you think smart, you'll win without ever raising your voice." She gave me a name, a contact at the Legal Aid Center, said not to make sudden moves, said to watch every document that entered the house, every transaction, every change in the kids' routines. And above all, she said to document everything. So I did. I began quietly taking pictures of anything that felt off. The way he now kept his documents locked in a drawer. The way packages started arriving to an address that wasn't mine. The way the kids had new toothbrushes that I never bought, left at a second home. I opened a new email account, forwarded copies of everything to myself, labeled it Life Archive. And still, I smiled when he walked in, packed lunches, folded clothes, kept the home clean. Because I understood now, he wasn't planning a divorce. He was planning a disappearance, not just of our marriage, but of me. He thought if he could slowly shift ownership of the house, of the finances, of the narrative, he could slide me out like a forgotten drawer, and I'd vanish quietly, like an old story no one tells anymore. But what he didn't know was this. I don't vanish. I watch, I learn, I build from silence. He had the paperwork, but I was becoming the proof. Still, some part of me hoped that maybe someone, anyone from his side, would see what was happening. That someone would say, this isn't right. She doesn't deserve this. So I reached out, first to his mother. She had always been polite to me, not warm, but civil. She used to call on birthdays. She came by with stew the day I miscarried. She had seen me raise her grandchildren with care. So I called her, just to ask if she'd seen the kids recently, if they'd mentioned anything odd, if she'd noticed him changing. Her response? "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice confused. "I thought you passed." Silence. "What did you say?" I asked. She chuckled nervously. "Well, I mean, he didn't say it like that. Just that you'd been unwell, that you were gone. I assumed maybe you went back to your family's village. Or, God forgive me, I thought maybe..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I hung up without another word. Gone. I wasn't gone. I was sitting right there, heart pounding, hands shaking, breath held between disbelief and fury. He'd told her I was gone. Dead? Abandoned them? Mentally unwell? I didn't know, but I knew enough. The lie was bigger than I thought. I called my cousin next. She picked up cheerfully, and I tried to keep my voice steady. "Nene, have you heard anything from him? About me?" She hesitated. "He told me you needed space, that you left the kids with him, that you were sorting things out. Honestly, I figured you two split. Then when I saw the new pictures with him and that woman, I assumed he'd finally moved on." Moved on? Like I was luggage, something you wheel to a gate and abandon when the next flight is prettier. And the pictures, they weren't private. He was posting them, publicly. There was one in a restaurant I used to love, my kids in matching outfits, the woman in my favorite shade of red, a caption that read, "Family is everything." That's when the messages started drying up. Church women stopped checking in. The group chats went silent. Someone had reshaped the story, and I was no longer the wounded wife. I was the problem. To them, I was either dead, mad, or bitter. And either way, I wasn't welcome in the version of life they were now watching unfold. He wasn't just replacing me. He was broadcasting it. Loudly, proudly, as if his narrative needed an audience to make it true. Sometimes the ones who share your blood are the first to doubt your worth. And sometimes the ones you break bread with, the ones who said, "We're family no matter what," become the ones who scroll past your disappearance with a shrug. I learned something during that time. People don't want your pain. They want your silence. so they can keep enjoying the person who caused it. So, I gave them what they wanted. I went silent. But I never stopped moving. He thought I was retreating, that I was giving up, that maybe, finally, I was accepting my role as a shadow in a story he was rewriting without my name. But silence is not surrender. It's strategy. He became bold in my quiet, bolder than I thought possible. He'd walk in late, no explanation. Sometimes no greeting. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. The kids stopped asking where Daddy was. They knew better than I did, because they'd been trained. Slowly, carefully. When he was home, he was louder, more performative, always showing affection in front of the kids, saying things like, "Your mom's the best, huh?" Like a man rehearsing his innocence for an audience. But when they weren't looking, his eyes said something else. That look, the one you give something you've already thrown away? One evening, I watched him from the kitchen window. He was in the yard, playing with the kids. She was there too, the woman, sitting on the porch swing like she belonged. She didn't see me watching. Neither did he. That night, he walked in like nothing happened, asked if there was any leftover stew, kissed the top of my head like it was still his right. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break plates. I wanted to make a scene that would echo into every room. But I didn't. I smiled. I served him a plate. Because I had realized something bigger than betrayal. He wasn't just taking things. He was reframing everything, making himself the victim. To our friends, he was the man holding it together, raising kids while his wife struggled. To our children, he was the steady hand, the one who didn't cry, didn't sleep all day. To his mother, he was the grieving husband. To his mistress, he was the hero who'd been abandoned. And me? I was the problem that conveniently couldn't speak for herself. So I didn't argue. Because arguing gives the enemy shape. Instead, I played the long game. I listened when he thought I was asleep. I noted every time he left. Every time he returned. I timed his absences. I tracked the money he didn't know I still had access to. And when mutual friends began calling, offering peaceful advice, I let them speak. You should just move on. Maybe he just needs time to figure things out. Don't punish the kids by making it hostile. Be the bigger person. They meant well. But what they didn't understand was this. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was trying to survive him. They thought I was the storm, but I was the stillness before it, because I had no intention of yelling. I was building something beneath the silence, something that didn't need permission, or pity, or applause. I began with the small things. The forgotten passwords he never updated, the dusty file cabinet he hadn't locked in years, the receipts he stuffed into drawers and forgot existed. I copied everything, quietly. I created a timeline. Every dinner he missed, every weekend he vanished, every lie that dressed itself in, "I'm just helping a friend." I built it like a case file, not out of vengeance, but clarity. I wasn't trying to win a war. I was proving, to myself first, that I hadn't imagined it all. The paralegal Mrs. Lenland referred me to was young but sharp. Her name was Amara, and she didn't speak much. But when she did, every word was surgical. She reviewed what I'd gathered. She said, "You've got more than most people walk in with. He's already living a double life. You're just the only one not officially notified yet." Her calmness gave me breath. She suggested I move my funds into a secure account, advised I request medical documentation, proving mental clarity, preemptive evidence in case he ever tried to paint me as unstable, told me to stop confronting him emotionally, let him believe I was still numb, still naive. Then she said, "Whatever move you make next, make it once, clean, final. No second chances." So I moved. I visited the bank and closed the joint savings quietly, transferred half of what legally belonged to me into a private trust. I updated the school pickup forms, made sure they could never release my children to anyone not listed, especially not Mommy Tessa. I updated my will. I updated my insurance beneficiaries. I got my name re-added to the children's birth records, something I never thought would matter again. And then I called her, Tessa. I got her number through a contact at the church, someone who had seen them together and pieced it together long before I had. She answered on the third ring. "Hello?" Her voice was soft, sweeter than I expected. I said, "This is his wife, the one who's apparently dead." Silence. I could feel her breath catch, even through the phone. I said, "I'm not here to argue. I just have one question for you." Pause. "Has he told you I'm dead, or just irrelevant?" The silence that followed was long, heavy, telling. She never answered the question, but she didn't have to, because her silence was louder than denial. And when I ended the call, I didn't feel rage. I felt closure. She wasn't my enemy. She was just the lie he chose because it didn't come with a history. And I was history. I was witness. I was the woman who knew too much, which is why he needed me out of the frame. He didn't want freedom. He wanted a reboot, with none of the guilt, none of the baggage, none of the truth. But truth has a funny way of surviving, even when it's buried. And I wasn't going to fight him with fury. I was going to fight him with facts. So I printed everything, organized the timeline, highlighted the forged documents, copied the account transfers, photographed the drawings my children had made, each one showing a new mom in our old home. And I waited, because soon he would come to me, thinking he held the upper hand, thinking I was still the woman who didn't know.
He came to me 3 days later. It was a Saturday. I was in the kitchen, peeling oranges for the kids' lunchboxes. Something mundane, something grounding. I heard the door open, heard his footsteps pause, then shuffle forward like he wasn't sure which version of me he'd find that day. He had a folder in his hand, plain, blue. Nothing written on the cover, but I knew what it was. He sat down at the kitchen table and waited for me to turn. I didn't. He cleared his throat. "I think we should talk," he said like a man doing someone else a favor. I rinsed my hands and dried them slowly, then I turned and sat. He pushed the folder toward me. I didn't touch it. "It's about custody and visitation. I figured we could work this out without making it messy. For the kids." That word again. Messy. The word they always use when they want to break something cleanly and pretend your blood doesn't stain the floor. I looked at him. Really looked. The man I used to kiss on rainy nights. The man I once thought would catch me if I fell. The man who now sat across from me trying to negotiate a future he'd already built without me. I slid a different folder across the table. He frowned, opened it. Inside were copies of property deeds, financial statements, account transfers, school forms, witness statements, timeline logs, pictures of him, of her, of our kids with her. The last page? A signed retainer from my attorney. His fingers trembled. He looked up at me, stunned. "You were never supposed to find out like this." I leaned forward, but I did. I held his gaze, and I'm still here. No shouting, no crying, no breaking plates. Just truth, lined in ink and sealed with silence. He opened his mouth, then closed it, rubbed the back of his neck, tried to smile. Couldn't. That's when I knew. He hadn't just lost control of the narrative, he had underestimated the woman who wrote it with him. He stood, took his folder back, left without another word. I stayed at the table a while longer, just breathing. Then I cleaned up the peels and packed the lunchboxes, because life goes on, and mine was just beginning again.
The divorce finalized quietly. No courtroom battle, no drama. He didn't contest a thing. Maybe it was the folder. Maybe it was the silence he hadn't prepared for. Or maybe he realized that no version of his story could survive the evidence I had gathered. He signed everything, gave up the house, walked away from the joint accounts like they were already empty. And the woman? She vanished. One day, her Facebook disappeared. No more weekend brunches, no more "family is everything" captions. I don't know what he told her. I don't care. What I do know is when a lie meets the light, it shrinks. He moved out, took only what was his. The couch he never liked, his books, some clothes, a few electronics. The silence he left behind was different from before. This one was peaceful. I stayed in the house, not because I wanted to haunt the memories, but because I had built every corner of it. Every room still carried my breath, my touch, my prayers. But something in me still needed new air. So a few months later, I moved into a small cottage, farther from town, but closer to something I hadn't felt in years, myself. It had peeling paint and creaky floors, and the roof needed fixing. But the light in the mornings poured in like grace, and the quiet felt like music again. Every Friday, my oldest child would come by after school. She wouldn't say much. She didn't have to. She'd bring a single flower, always the same, a pink camellia, my favorite. She never asked what happened, but she stopped calling anyone else Mom. Sometimes I'd see him at a distance, at school events, in the grocery store parking lot, always alone, always in a hurry, like a man being chased by something no one else could see. I never waved, never looked too long, not out of hate, out of peace, because I had no desire to relive the war I had already won. It wasn't revenge, it was remembering who I was before I was erased. One afternoon, my youngest came to visit. He was taller now, voice deeper, but his eyes, they were still mine. He didn't come with flowers or gifts, just a bag of groceries and an awkward smile. We sat on the back porch, 2 mugs of warm tea between us, the kind of silence that was no longer uncomfortable, just full. After a while, he spoke. "Mom, can I ask you something?" I nodded. He looked down at his mug. "Why didn't you fight louder?" I smiled. Not the bitter kind, the real kind, The kind that comes from knowing the answer isn't simple, but it's solid. Because storms pass, I said gently, but still water never forgets. He looked at me, confused, but listening. If I had screamed, they would have called me crazy. If I had begged, they would have called me desperate. But silence? Silence made them wonder. I placed my hand over his. Sometimes strength isn't noise, it's knowing. Knowing who you are, knowing when to move, knowing how to move once, so clean and strong that no one sees it coming. He was quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, I hated him for what he did, but I never hated you. I just didn't know how to help. You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to grow up and one day understand. And now, he did. Before he left, I walked him to the gate. He turned back and said, You never lost, did you? No. I just stopped playing by rules that were made to keep me small. That night, I lit a candle. Not for mourning, for peace. I sat by the window, the soft glow washing over me, a breeze touching my face like a whisper from heaven. In the distance, I imagined him, alone, maybe in court again, maybe chasing another illusion, maybe still blaming everyone but himself. But that's no longer my concern, because peace doesn't look back. It rests. It breathes. It lives. And me? I lived. Not to prove anything, but because I deserved to. If this story hit you in the chest the way it did me, share it. Comment below. What would you have done? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of women who fought back and didn't flinch.